Thank you for listening to Hustle and Heart. I'm your host, Edie Weintraub. Today we're talking to Matt Marcus, Executive Chef at the Woodall. Matt, so glad to have you on today. Would you please tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Certainly. My name is Matt Marcus. I cook food for a living, and I am an ambassador of all things sustainable. I've really, over the past 30 years of being in a kitchen, developed a passion for where things come from and how the food system affects our community. Really happy to be here.
Who has been your biggest mentor in your journey in culinary?
That is a huge question because I've had a lot of very outstanding mentors, but I would say the one that impacted me the most via my integrity and flavor seeking would be Michael Toohey. Michael Toohey was an Atlanta chef, had several different restaurants, but the one he's most remembered for is the Wood Fire Grill. I had been in the industry for a while when I got the job as Tournade with Michael, and it was the first time I had really seen a full whole animal program and a restaurant that was actually taking trips to different farms and planting things in the ground and planning on what to do with those things when they came up for harvest. And not just that, but discussing when we were putting in the ground, why. And it was the first time I had heard about the Three Sisters and soil rotation and crop rotation, and it really, the passion in what went onto the plate, not only just the cookery, because he was a perfectionist, so everything that we cooked had to be perfect, but it also had to be with heart, and the heart came from what the animal's lifestyle was while it was on the planet before slaughter, or how we treated the vegetables, even the environment that the vegetables were in, or the animals were in. Happy vegetables, happy animals. He also showed me a simplistic way of cooking, where it was extremely ingredient focused, and for me, as somebody who was very technique and transition and manipulate products up until that point, it really opened my eyes to combining a fewer amount of flavors for a more exponential explosion, so to speak. So it was really started the point in my career where I started taking things off of the plate as opposed to adding them to the plate, and it was really one of the first pieces of me finding out who I was as a chef and how I cook. Yeah, that's Michael.
How long ago was that?
He also went. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, how long ago was that?
That was quite a while ago. That was maybe pre 2010. That I was with Michael too. It was the year before Woodfire was sold to Kevin Gillespie, and that transition. So whenever that was, that was a long time ago.
So that's been your foundation moving forward into all the things you've done since.
I think, yeah, that was one of the pieces that gave me the legs that I have to stand on now. And being I'm a third generation chef, so the techniques and cookery I had at a very, very young age. I mean, even being able to spend time with Edna Lewis at the Horseradish Grill, because I grew up with Daniel and Josh. That part I always had, and working with Tui and like-minded chefs like him really showed me where my care could be and how I could feel pride in what we were doing, because the pride in what we were doing was I'm sorry, give me a moment. Kristen, I'm live. Can you shut the door, please? Thank you. Um, where, where was I? So, in speaking, hopefully we can cut and edit this. So in speaking on learning from Tui, and gaining one of the legs to stand on, because I already had all of I had a lot of the cookery. I had a lot of the cookery down. I knew about searing, I knew about braising, I knew, blanching, I knew all of the simplistic things. I could make a perfect omelet. I just didn't know where the eggs came from. And to me, before I got to Michael Tui, there was like an okay understanding of why we would use carton eggs to make a hollandaise versus eggs from the farm. And it was kind of like this. Before there, I had spent time in some very high revenue restaurants like Chops, and it was we were cooking, but it was sacrifices to integrity were made based on revenue, if that makes sense. And Tui did not sacrifice a single thing, and it showed me that I could care that much, and it is okay as a chef to care that much, and I can find my voice, but in doing so, I can help my community and those around me, because growing up in a conservative Jewish household, always giving back to the community was a big part of my life, and still is. And being able to feed that part of my soul while cooking and continuing on a path that I had found passion in, it really, I would say it was one of the bases to everything moving forward. And not only that, Michael Tui, when we parted ways, he told me I needed to work in a grocery store. I needed to grow up at that point. I had gotten salaried chef positions very early on because of my performance, but I was still going out with all of the cooks, and I was partying, and I was having a good time, and I wasn't getting in early, and things like that. And Michael Tui shook me, and it made me make a decision whether or not I was going to actually focus and become a top tier, or if I was just going to float through this and be like a lot of other chefs that I knew. And I made that decision after working with Michael Tui, that it was time to grow up. And I did. I grew up. And he was able to introduce me to other like-minded people through Slow Food and the James Beard Foundation, and a lot of good networking came from working with Michael. And he, even to this day, I talked to him today. He sent me a message today. He had just read about the Woodall announcement, and sent me a congratulations. So he always cared deeply about me and the way that I cook and my integrity, and he's shown a way and introduced me to other chefs that have also taught me more than he could, which is incredible. And I've kind of tried to emulate that in chefs, sous chefs, and CDPs that have worked with me. It's teach them every single thing I know, but if you can recognize they're at a point to where they need to move on and learn from someone else, then that's where you send them. You call the guy and you say, hey, I've got a rock star. So that's really speaking on mentorship and Michael Tui.
It's a beautiful story. Well, now my next question was going to be, when was your aha moment? And it sounds like that in and of itself was a significant aha moment. Have you had another since?
I've had a lot of aha moments. Watershed was actually, I would say, the most aha moments at one time. And it all really started with working with Michael Tui and starting to view the metric in a different way. And so there were a lot of aha moments. I remember month 4 or 5 after the transition at Watershed, where we decided to stop uh, purchasing produce basically by the pound, and we started investing in our farmers. So we worked out a salary program for the farmers. We knew we were taking a risk on harvest, but it also, we reaped tremendous rewards from it. It forced us to be extremely creative in taking on whole harvest, which was also an aha moment. 300 pounds of corn for, a restaurant that's doing 120 covers a night that's a lot of corn, and you have to, things like that. So you have to be able to preserve. We were doing a lot of fermenting, a lot of curing, a lot of smoking, a lot of drying, freeze drying. We were using liquid night. Everything we could do possible to save harvest. And then it made us realize that if we were responsible for the growth, and it was doing what we needed to the soil, that we could preserve the harvest. And it basically translated our menu into products that we could use that had been slightly manipulated through preservation out of season. So we were able to keep corn in an essence on our menu for 4 or 5 months that you shouldn't have been able to. But since we were fermenting and we were pickling and we were doing all kinds of things, we could use that in different applications. We also saw that translate the initial investment in whole animal. So we were on a whole cow program and a whole pig program, and all fish came in whole. We were dry aging fish. So we saw, it was investment in the beginning. And then once the program came to fruition and you could start activating sales and revenue against the program, everything started making sense, because you grow value on things like that as long as there isn't tremendous loss. And the amount of tracking and science we were using to maintain product, I think through the entire 3-year charcuterie program that we had going, we only lost about 5 pounds of somebody else's sausage that we just hung in our room. Those were a lot of aha moments. It was also one of the things that I had seen in Atlanta I don't mean it to sound this horrible, but it's basically you pay a rate to where your staff has to ask to borrow money against their paycheck, and it's kind of indentured servitude. It's horrible. And immediately when I had sole ownership, we changed that, and we paid a livable wage. And it wasn't it wasn't nickel and diming. It was asking the staff what they needed to survive, and then figuring out where we could save otherwise. So my labor was high, but it was worth it, and everybody was very well vested into the business and cared about what they were doing. And it removed a tremendous amount of gray noise from the employees and allowed them to focus. And what we found is, if we got creative with all of these creative and caring people around us, we were able to save in other avenues, such as food cost and some overhead things. One of the first people to go was the landscapers, because the staff was picking up the parking lot. They cared. They were picking up the patio before they walked in. I haven't seen a cleaner restaurant from the parking lot to the front door. And it was not, somebody else picking it up. It was the staff. They were doing, and myself, of course. And it was really nice to see. Those were all aha moments, because I had been taught that you just can't do it, and you have to draw a line somewhere, and you have to be an asshole. And I didn't see that with the metric. It was also, we started going into a fixed price menu that we saw working very well. And what we noticed with Atlanta was that everybody wants a sense of value, and they want to understand what they're getting for their money. So if you tell people it's $100 for a meal before alcohol, they're expecting things. So add an amuse, add a bread service, add a crudité, so it makes it into a 7-course experience. It's a celebration of what we were doing on the farms and in-house with our bread program and other things like that, and the petite vegetables that we were serving and that kind of thing. But it didn't really, we were paying the farmer a salary. So we weren't paying $35 a pound for these petite vegetables like other people do. We were growing them, and we were able to harvest them and celebrate them with the guests, and so it made our metric work. Unfortunately, the world kind of ended, and it messed up a lot of these long-term programs that we had activated, and I didn't have the capital, nor did I ask. I didn't participate in any of the programs because I didn't have any loans going into it, and it would have been the first time borrowing money, and I couldn't do it, not knowing what was going to happen. It was really when I will never forget sitting on the patio and looking up outside at the lights out in the hotels, all of them. They used to keep a couple of them on, even if they were empty, but they had just turned all the lights off, and we knew something was about to happen. Yeah, so those were a lot of aha moments. There's a ton. I could talk for an hour on different kind of aha moments. Like I remember the first time I saw a guy named Vince, who's a chef of mine in Mississippi, clean lamb bones, like French lamb bones, with a piece of butcher twine that he had attached to the sink, and he just wrapped around the bone and pulled it off. That was an aha moment. I mean, there's a ton of them. There's absolutely a ton of them.
It was perfect. So you touched on a couple of things in regards to staff. I find that when I'm looking to scout new clients to work with, I go talk to the bartender. I talk to the server. Do you like working here? Is this a normal Tuesday night? Is this a normal Friday night? Does it seem light? What do you think's going on? And I see, just as you've described, if you have a happy staff, they will take care of the customer, the diner, the guest. And to me, that speaks volumes of the owners. For those, unfortunately, that do not speak highly of their owners, I don't even bother talking to them because I don't see that they've got a future in this industry. So the ones that speak highly of their team, those are the ones that I reach out to. So you nailed it.
It's very true.
What has been your biggest challenge to date? Would you say that, and I know obviously you've had a massive adventure in the world of culinary, so perhaps a recent story maybe within the last couple of years?
I mean, my biggest challenge to date has always been my integrity. It's been a tremendous challenge. And the one time that I felt I was not sacrificing any piece of my own integrity, well, actually, there were two times. The farm at Brush Creek Ranch, I sacrificed zero integrity and was asked to only celebrate my integrity. But it was, Bruce White, it was a billionaire, and he understood what it costs to do a fully sustainable seed to table 30,000 acre ranch, which is ridiculous. And when I had Watershed, I had to sacrifice zero pieces of integrity. And it might be, I've worked for a lot of really, really talented chefs, but at some point there is always a question mark on my personal integrity, if that makes sense. And I draw a very stern line on what I'm willing to send out to guests, what I'm willing to essentially live in. I run a tight ship. I run a spotless kitchen. It's who I am. At points it doesn't. Here's the thing about this challenge is because none of these facilities or no restaurant on the planet can be run by one person. It takes an entire group. It takes an entire team. And I learned this early in my career from Michael and a guy named Sean McClendon. They both drilled this one into my head. And it's, if you ever care more than the person above you, nothing will happen. you will work yourself to death and no changes will instill. You can have your entire, and as a chef, pre-ownership, I worked for a lot of GMs. I worked for some tremendously great owners, but I worked for some GMs that were on property that just did not care to the level I did. And it takes a unified front. It takes a staff that all understands the expectation, the goal, the mission, teamwork, really. But I like a level that is unattainable on a daily basis, and we're constantly working to attain that goal that is absolutely unattainable. I mean, we're at the point now at the Woodall where the entire staff is picking. There isn't a piece of a French fry on the floor at any point during the day, and that's the kind of all corners are clean. Everything is ready to be slept on or eaten off of. That's what I like. But I can't be there 24 hours a day. In my onboarding of a facility, I normally am for the first 14 days at least. But after that, I need some rest. I have 3 beautiful children. I have a wonderful wife. I want to spend some time with them, and I need it to be held up the standards when I'm not there. And it's also one of the reasons I'm so excited to be working with the team that I am at the Woodall, is because it was a unit before I got there, with common goals set up by Carl Gorlein, who was my chef de cuisine at Watershed. And so it's walking into a restaurant that almost feels like it was just put on a tee for me and ready to knock out of the park. Even going through menu knowledge with the staff, it's fun, and I've been able to just step in and start cooking, and it's been a lot of fun. I've seen a lot of regulars that have been wanting me to cook for a long time again, and actually in a restaurant, not running 3 or 4, which is super duper nice.
Hearing that story a lot. There are other chefs in Atlanta who have built these restaurant empires and now are happy just to go back to the kitchen and get out really good food. So it's beautiful to hear that. Is there a ritual or habit that you believe contributes to your creative process?
My creative process? Yes. There is a ritual, there is a habit. The habit is create. And I don't want it to get misconstrued as creating new things every day, but it's keeping the mind active. So it might be a small tweak on something you've done before. It might be a pivot on something that already exists, but it's just formulating new ideas on a daily basis, and it keeps the mind fluid for me. A big piece of it, however, was developing a vocabulary of technique and product knowledge early in my career. So the best advice for creativity is shut the fuck up in the beginning and learn as much as you can, because you're developing a vocabulary and an alphabet to where you can write poetry down the road. But always create. And even if it's somebody else's, there was a lot of times when I was on the line cooking other people's food, because that was my job, was to reproduce this specifically as the chef intended. And I would do that and do that and do that. But also when I would go outside for a 5-minute cigarette break at the end of the shift, I would have my notebook, and there were different moves in the pan, how I mounted this sauce, how I finished this, that I would jot down, because something would inspire me throughout the repetition of recreating for that chef, that I could take that technique and transition it into something that I had been thinking about. And so a lot of creativity for me is just repetition of creation. Keep doing it, keep cooking, keep cutting. I still love to break down all of the fish at the restaurant, and we're on a whole fish program at the Woodall, and I love doing it because within that moment it kind of zens me out, and I'm able to think about all of the things I can do with the fish, or all of the moments I've had across the world with a similar fish that I'm able to, that I'm breaking down. yeah, the habit, there can be forced at a point. If you are doing this daily, if you're creating and creating and creating daily, you can force creativity. For me, it is I have to be someplace quiet and in nature uh, in order to force creativity, and I have to have a box if it's to be forced. So I need parameters of what I am creating to focus the mind on that. So it's, if it's forced creativity, let's say it's a tasting menu for 8 people. I'm also ADD, so I have to like convince myself that everybody's life depends on it, and then I create it. If I don't, I'm like, oh yeah, it's just enough.
I think
Okay,
you answered that question perfectly. Thank you. So
yeah.
I had the chance recently to go visit John down at Comfort Farms. I took 11 women, rented a van. I said, we're going. I want to hear John's story. I want to see his farm. And he shared with me that you buried somewhere on the property some sauerkraut. Did
I
you
think it's
remember
three.
that?
I think it's 3 years old now. If nobody's found it.
It has not it has not expressed itself.
We gravestone. We put
He spoke very highly of you, so
the
I
year
just wanted
after,
to share
and
that love.
we couldn't find it. Yeah, we buried. It was 4 or 5 gallon buckets of fresh cabbage that we had harvested. With just, I put them in bags, shoved them in the buckets, put salt all over them, and buried them, sealed them up, and buried them. They're going to be really good if anybody finds them. They're still probably nice because it is one of my favorite ways. I learned it from my grandmother. The ground holds a almost perfect temperature, especially here in Georgia, for preserving. So burying things is not that weird.
Good. I'm excited to treasure hunt next time I'm down there with him.
Yeah, good. Let me know if you find it. Open it and run. It'll be real stinky. Just know that brassicas, they release a gas that we all know it's Brussels sprout farts.
Yes, no, it's very kind of you to leave that treasure with him. So do tell, how has technology changed how you work, how you order, how you navigate the kitchen?
Um, Technology has always been a part of it. I think the phones and the iPads are pretty new, and that has been a difficult transition for me. I went from creating binders per station, entremet, roti binders. Every station would have a binder, to iPads for the stations, and all the recipes and everything for the house is on the iPad next to the station. I feel weird about it. I still do. I don't let my guys play on their phones or look up stuff on their phones. I make sure at lineup, because we do lineup pre and post shift, it's always a question: have you sanitized your phone today? Every time I see a phone in the kitchen, I'm reminded about the fat duck and the norovirus, and like just how easy it is for a facility. Because I've been there, I've eaten. That place is unbelievably spotless, and the wait staff is incredibly trained, and the kitchen staff is absolutely top tier of the world. And yeah, technology freaks me out on that side. The good stuff, I haven't really dove into social media. I'm not very good at. I have a very, I guess, incredible list of small followers. I think I'm maybe in the 3 to 4K range, but everybody that I do interact with is a world-class chef, restaurateur, sommelier, or a philanthropist of some kind. So I feel like I kind of missed out on some of the weirdness in social media, but I also don't post much. And I've seen guys that have worked for me and with me that now have millions of followers because they're making stuff in their house. And I ask myself every day if I want to do that instead of, run a restaurant. But it all takes commitment. I don't know. I think I've seen the transition from social media and specific food photography affecting restaurant guest count to now we're at a point to where you have to show all kinds of weird acting and things like that. It's not, you just can't put up a picture of food anymore, that's all I still do is in my stories. It's like a little wiener on the ground, from our all beef, our bovine in a blanket that we have on the menu, which is one of my favorite appetizers. It's got everything spiced. We're making them all in house. They're cute, so cute. They're little pigs in a blanket, but we're doing all beef bovine in a blanket. I think it's made all of the tricks that I've learned in the past 30 years and the techniques readily available for people that don't understand how to roast a chicken, which you see this whole entire category of chef and restaurateur that's just, I read an article yesterday about a new restaurant in London that sent a few people to the hospital for serving them poisonous mushrooms. And it's like, with all of this knowledge at your fingertips, and if you can figure out a few of these tricks, you can look like a guy like me, but you still, come on, you're going to hurt somebody. It's a lot of time spent behind a stove and spent with people teaching me how to care for others and what is acceptable, what's not acceptable. So, for me, I think I don't know, the technology thing is weird. It really is. I kind of wish it hadn't affected food in the way it has, but at the same point, I think there are really talented people in cities and places that would never get exposure that are now being celebrated for doing the right thing. I think the message, like John's message and like Will's message, at White Oak, I think it's amazing that they're getting out there and their stories being told, and people are seeing that there is a side to sustainable agriculture. And I'm noticing that the conversation is happening, whether or not people are paying attention, which has been one of my biggest headaches for my entire life, is know where your food comes from, know what kind of additives, preservatives, know what kind of pesticides are being sprayed on the ground. But I learned a long time ago, for me, I could only affect the community around me, and my efforts were better suited at, helping those that were directly around me. And I think I started my conversation with all this about 3 years before people were willing to listen. But I think technology has also affected our supply chain. I think it's affected our work ethic. I think it's affected our laziness. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of missed messages with technology, but at the same point, it's made it to where I'm doing things with food that I never thought when I was younger would be possible. And that's from having some of the tools that technology can produce around and learning what we can do with them, which is also totally awesome. I think that I was talking to a friend the other day, and he's got a robot. It's a robot company, and they're robot waiters. And evidently it's a bigger thing than I thought it was. And it's up to society, really. I think there'll always be. I think and I hope there'll always be a place for chefs like me. And if everybody else wants to go to a sushi spot with a rotator and a robot waiter, it's fine. I'm not that worried about it. Technology. We can go on for a long time on
we
it.
can expand all these conversations.
The AI thing too is weird. Somebody showed me AI a couple months ago, and I was sitting down with them. We were just having a cup of coffee, and they were like, "Have you tried this for recipe development?" I'm like, "No, man, I'm using a gram scale." And they just typed in front of me on their phone, they said, write a recipe for mushroom garum in the style of Rene Redzepi. And it and it was amazing at first glance. And then I started to look at the recipe, and you realize that there are going to be a lot of disappointed people that are using this technology, but hopefully it might get better in the future. But I feel like that's my job too, because I saw a few other things. It was like, please write a station list, and it included some of the products, and the AI was able to just produce it. These are some of the things that hold value in my life, is being able to accurately produce these for people. It's been in between jobs. I've spent a year plus consulting in my career before, and it was pretty thankless, which is, I guess, how it goes. When it works, you didn't do anything. When it doesn't work, you did it all. I get it. But at the same point, I kind of lost my train of thought. That made me giggle. I thought about that.
Oh, good. I can ask you the next question. You ready?
Yeah, go for it. Shoot.
What are some of the biggest challenges you foresee in food and beverage in the next couple of years?
I see the biggest challenges I see in food and beverage is the middle of the road restaurant, the mom and pop and the chain restaurant. I think everybody's going to be fighting for positions. There's been a lot of new openings. There's been a lot of closings. And it seems that with the delivery apps, the middle of the road restaurant might disappear. It is more convenient to spend that price point for people and have it delivered to their home than it is to go out. That price point has become way more convenient to get at your house than to go out to a restaurant of that caliber. And what we're seeing and what we have seen in the past few years of restaurants of that caliber, and I'm speaking in, taking the nation into account in the world, is the service staff, because of the tip average and because of the check average, you're finding less talented. Because of the exodus of service staff in finer dining, now you're seeing the people that were excelling at that level, at the lower level, have all taken jobs, and now they're making an average salary throughout the year from working fine dining or elevated cuisine that they weren't making before in the lower level, and it's easier to get those at the house. So why would people want to go out, have a poor experience, get the same quality of food, or they could pay the same tip for somebody to deliver it to them with a smile? And from what I've seen with the delivery apps, if you're willing to pay $2 or $3 extra, you can get it within 15 to 20 minutes, in that same time frame that you can get it in a restaurant without going there. So I think people are reserving when they go out to places that make them feel special, and the way you do that is with your staff and your environment. And if you've lost the staff that makes people feel special, and they've gone to restaurants that have a slightly higher per person average or check average because menu prices are a little higher, then you're going to see people going out a little bit less. But when they're going out to those places that make them feel special. So I think, they're going to have a tremendous amount of challenges coming up, because they don't. It's hard to have staff retention. The environments are cold. The corporate structure of those restaurants are not conducive. The pay structure is not conducive, and we've seen a total mass exodus of anybody with talent or work ethic that has been in those locations level up since the major exodus of the entire hospitality industry, which started happening 3 years ago. I know a lot of really, really talented chefs that are selling roofs now, which is, it's one of those things, but they're making more, they're working less. Difficult, passionate industry You have got to want to totally commit at this point, if you have any integrity at all, or you get out, is basically what I'm seeing. But I am seeing a lot more of us in a percentage wise with integrity be more successful because of the people willing to come out and try a slightly higher price point. With what we've able to do now, which is something that I've strived to do, is create the environment of, world-class hospitality without the pretension, because you have capable people who care about the job, which is it's amazing. So hopefully, it settles out and people start figuring out who cares for them and allowing us to continue to do that.
So appreciate your time, Matt. Where can people find more about you?
I think that there's stuff all over the place. The Google search is fun. There's some stuff about jellyfish, serving jellyfish. There's anywhere. I have Instagram, Regal Gourmet. My Facebook is Matt Marcus. Normal stuff. Not very good at the internet. The Woodall. The best way is to come in and see me and taste some food. It's an open kitchen. You'll be able to see me from wherever you sit in the dining room, and feel free to walk up to the pass and come say hi and introduce yourself and learn a little bit more. We love to create lasting and memorable experiences at the Woodall. So whether you want to come in and get, in my opinion, one of the best burgers in Atlanta, or you want a 7-course omakase style meal with some of the most fantastic products you've ever seen, either way.
I want it all. Okay. Well, a big thank you to our guest today, Matt Marcus of the Woodall, for sharing such valuable information and insights about his culinary journey. Be sure to check him out at the Woodall. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, keep savoring the flavors of success. Stay hungry for more stories from leaders and innovators in the culinary world.
Hello, my name is Matt Marcus, and you're listening to Hustle and Heart.